Good afternoon. I'm Steve Lentini, Lord and Lentini, training for life and the best getting better. So I've had this topic before. There's a little slant on it today, but the topic is we shouldn't call death death. We should call it what's next. And that's because of what I experienced on November 18th, 5 days after getting in an ambulance while doing a seminar. One second I was fine, never had any symptoms. The next second I needed an ambulance. I learned later that my pancreas had a blockage in the duct and it shut down that day. And when your pancreas is blocked, the digestive enzymes burst into your body cavity and start digesting. They don't forget what their job is. They go right to work digesting the rest of your organs. And most people don't survive acute necrotizing pancreatitis. At least 20 years ago, it's probably improved now. But I can tell you on the fifth day, I also had an anterior myocardial infarction, a major heart attack. Because when you get acute necrotizing pancreatitis, your body builds fluid. I blew up by 30 pounds. And then that caused stress from fluid around my heart. It wasn't the tuna salad in the cafeteria. And spoiler alert, I survived. But I was in the hospital another 40 days, 35 days there straight. 60 days. I took one little break altogether, except for one day, one afternoon, I was feeling a little better. And they said, "Oh, I think you could go home." They were wrong. And 40 out of the next 60, it was 100 days altogether, 6 months out of work. But on that fifth day, November 18th, I had two friends visiting me, the same two that were quite frankly often there. And I was in and out of consciousness. I remember waving my hands like I was directing a symphony. And during that time, a hospice nurse who was also in the intensive care unit that day said to my two friends, she said, "Oh, he looks like some of my patients in hospice." She said they're often directing things, like they're getting ready to go. And one second I was with those two, and the next second I was one with everything and nothing. There's a what's next. But we don't bring this little human brain with us. I call it the acorn brain, the small minded thinker, the limited thinker, the narrow minded thinker, the one that has us scared of death and scared of so many things, living in fear instead of fully living. That voice wasn't there. And so it's not like I was on the other side and I went, I don't have a body. What the hell happened? No, I was just there. One with everything and nothing. Think about that. Fascinating. One with the infinite. One with the infinite. It was just an immediate knowing. Amazing light, amazing mercy, amazing grace. I mean, words do not describe it. I'm doing the best I can. What I reflected on later was that it matched exactly what Deepak Chopra has said. When people ask him, where do we come from and where do we return? He said, we come from pure consciousness, and that's where we return. Even my doggies agree. So there I was in pure consciousness, only the now, only the now. There was no past and no future. In fact, it's not even a choice. You do not have all the thoughts that are in our head here when we're in our body, in the physical existence. You don't have the acorn brain, that small-minded thinker. And so the next now was a life review, and only the good I had done, only the lives I had touched. And I made a note in my phone, and I'd like to read it. If we knew what awaits us, we would not spend a single moment on greed, pettiness, drama, selfishness, or concerned with anything from the outside. There was no mention of books I had written, titles I had, houses I owned, money in the bank. Everything we push ourselves so hard for and we worry about losing. Well, first of all, it was all gone, but I didn't think like that. It didn't seem like anything was gone because I was one with the infinite. If we really understood what was next, we would only want to be known by how we live from the inside out, by the good we do, by the lives we touch, our good intentions, our good thoughts. In fact, we would discipline this acorn brain, knowing what was next, and not believe it, not believe our thinking. We would discipline it and become more like the infinite, which is in the now. That's all there was the now. So the next now was a life review, as I said, and only the good I had done, only the lives I had touched were mentioned. In this human world, we have all kinds of guidance that says not only will you pay here in a cause and effect world, but you'll burn in hell forever. And if anything sounds small minded, it's not where we're going. Think about that. And it's not what created an infinite universe that we know very little about. Even though we think we know so much more today, we are probably as far off as the Incas and the Aztecs when they were sacrificing babies and princesses to the gods. That life force, as Lao Tzu said, had no name. You could call it the God, the goddess, the divine, the Brahma, the Buddha, the Abraham, the Muhammad, the Christ consciousness. It didn't have a name. We think like God, so we think that when we leave this existence, it's going to be very similar. Oh, Steve, you made it. You have a tea time at 4. Think about it. And I'm not trying to convince you of anything because I could care less. You'll all experience it at some point. I just hope not before this live event is over. I wish you a long life, but we're living from the wrong way. We're living from the outside in. There's many examples of it. Even our leaders are just spending time in pettiness, making each other wrong, not working to compromise, right? They're stuck in a monologue instead of a dialogue to jointly create a reality. That's one of the definitions of dialogue, a jointly created reality. It means having conversations. Monday morning quarterbacks are always right. And we have leadership that just gets up and points the finger. The other side is wrong. The other side is wrong. And I blame both sides. I don't take a side. I want to have a dialogue. And what I know is where we're going is far beyond our comprehension. And why I think it's important, because if we can work, all of us work to manage this acorn brain and believe we think like God, and instead begin to manage it to think more like the limitless, the infinite. And that's a job. But I'll give you some examples. So to manage limited thinking, narrow-minded thinking, take examples of universities today where on some campuses it's not okay to be one side or the other. And people are railing against it, even saying they're not safe. They're just making them wrong. When people follow anything blindly, there's a lot of history on my side to prove it doesn't work well. Not just some of the big events like Mussolini or Hitler or many of the other despots. We're looking at one live today called Putin. But anytime we follow anything or anyone blindly, it hasn't worked out very well through history. Now, you have Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid. 400 people died because he said, it's time to drink the Kool-Aid. Imagine how dumb that is. Then you have the sneaker cult. They believed that by putting their Nikes out by the garage, the mothership would know and pick them up. We're all going to the mothership at some point, and we know not when. And here we live in fear, worrying about death, and then COVID came to for those that are afraid of death, man, they really got afraid. They stopped living. And even leaders wanted society to stop living. Really dumb, limited thinking. And anything that sounds small minded is not what I witnessed. And it was fascinating to me when I got back in my body that only the good I had done was mentioned. That's what flashed before me. The good I had done for family and friends, strangers, people I bought sandwiches for, gave money to, smiled at, where I made a good impact. Now, think about, as an example, how you feel when you do good. When I ask people that, I've only had one person that said, well, I think I do. I feel good. It was a guy. He didn't know much about his feelings yet. You do good, you feel good, and somehow it's etched onto the fabric of time, which makes sense to me. Because imagine if we were all working to leave everything and everyone a little better than we find them, what that would do for the world. What if we gave up fighting over territory or fighting over money and let go of greed, knowing, by the way, we'll either leave it behind for someone else and we won't know what they're doing with it, or you could have fun spending it. Because everyone's responsibility really is to go out there and make a path, a journey, find your calling. You know, people are building for retirement, and many die. You've heard stories. Many die before they even get to spend it or enjoy it. Oh, Joe died the other day and he didn't even get his first retirement check. Now, that doesn't matter. I think we should all have fun and live our lives. Some people have said, for example, recently, talk about small-minded, thinking that the earth has 12 years left. That was a few years ago. I think we're down to 10. So if that's the case, the government should print billions. Give us all $1 billion. Let us go crazy, having fun. We've only got 10. It's less than 10 now, I would imagine. 9.5 years left. But here's the thing. Some of those people won't make it today. We're afraid of what's next because we call it death. Death. And that just brings up an amazing amount of fear for most people. Imagine my life now, because I know there's a what's next. We go from this to that. I don't know what occurs after. I have some thoughts about it, but who cares about my thoughts? I'm full of shit somewhere, and that's why I suggest no one follow me blindly. I got the gift of that experience. I'm not retiring because I have a calling now. You don't retire from a calling. John Maxwell said that. Somebody asked him, when are you retiring? He's 75 now. And I attended the IMC remotely this past week, the International Maxwell Conference. But John has said we have to get over ourselves. And that when someone asked him if he was going to retire, he said, you retire if you have a job, not a calling. We should be encouraging people to find their passion, their calling, because we all come with a gift. I had an inkling that there was something bigger for me, but not bigger titles and more fame or more money. And money comes. I'm grateful. I have plenty to spare and share, and I make sure to do certain things that help other people. I'm tithing, and I'm giving other gifts to causes that I believe in and support, because I know I could be gone again, even before this ends. As I said, I hope not for me and for you. But if we lived knowing there was a what's next, this is just a journey. We live in an infinite universe that's already been here billions of years from what we can determine with our little acorn brains. And people have surmised that maybe the sun has a few billion more years. I mean, it's an exposed nuclear fusion plant that's burning. It's going to end at some time. But who cares? Because you're going to end long before the sun. And we forget that we live in a miracle. So I have a globe next to my desk, and I gave these out to clients, albeit sometimes smaller ones. I got this by mistake from Amazon, but I usually give the marble size to remind people we're floating around on something that's probably this size or smaller. A physicist said a few weeks ago the sun is probably the size of a grain of sand in relation to our galaxy, let alone the universe. And here we are on that little marble floating around an exposed nuclear fusion plant at the exact right spot for life to occur. And then we have a rock floating around us that affects our tides. And some people would say many others at full moon. Oh, oh no, I'm sorry. That's not me. I don't think it's full moon. But my point is, we forget we live in a miracle because we're so afraid. We need to be living more fully and stop making each other wrong and stop with this they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, painting people with a broad brush. Because I can tell you a few things also. There were no sexes, no races, no religions, no nationalities. It's only broken down into parts here by the creator, the life force, the creative force that made a universe. And the purpose of breaking it all down is so that we can learn and grow and overcome our pettiness, our selfishness, our small minded thinking, our greed. And it's never been more prevalent, at least in my lifetime, than now. I challenge you, work on overcoming your small minded thinking. Study some of the principles of the universe. Lisa Randall, Greg Braden, and many others. Some of the physicists that have studied the universe, just so that you can amaze yourself about what we live in. And they are very far off. I challenge you to take a look at how small minded your thinking is, especially when you're railing against somebody on Twitter or Facebook. You think you're going to change their mind, and who cares what you think? I don't care. Your journey is none of my business, and my journey is none of yours. My job is my journey. Our journeys, and there's over 7 billion people on the planet, are as different as our fingerprints. And that's the purpose of them, is to overcome any judgments. There was no mention of sexual preferences, certain right religions, countries. It's the place where, certain religions are fighting themselves because they believe slightly differently. Different sects are fighting different sects. SECTS, although different sexes are fighting themselves. We're all making ourselves wrong for a human experience when we're supposed to be learning from one another. How do you do that if you're stuck in a monologue in your head or stuck blindly following anything or anyone, blindly following one platform or another, one religion or another, one sect or another within the same religion, and then making everyone wrong because you don't follow the right way in a universe, in an infinite universe? We call it infinite because that gives it a boundary in our mind. We can't accept that it goes on forever and ever. And some physicists are now suggesting there's possibly infinite universe on top of infinite universes. Just think about that. Ponder it. I challenge you. Work on overcoming all your small-minded thinking. Be willing to have a dialogue. Be willing to consider another point of view, because if we don't, we won't compromise. And then surely there'll be an end. But there are some people that have said the universe started as a big bang and then ended right away, immediately. But from that knowledge, there was another big bang. And then it lasted a little longer, and then it collapsed into itself. But from its knowledge, there was another big bang. It's the Akashic record, if you want to study it. And that gradually it turned into this from experience. we too can become something different by being open-minded and being willing to learn from our experience and learn from all the wondrous differences we all have. And who cares what journey people choose? It's none of your business. And from my experience, there'll be no mention of your mistakes. We're here to make them. Learn from that cause. Ooh, the effect wasn't good. People got mad at me. People got upset. I lost money. I lost a relationship. Whatever your mistake, it's here for you to learn from it and grow. And yet, some think they have to be perfect. I mean, even experts during COVID shut down other groups of experts in a monologue because it didn't follow the science. And then we found, oh, wait, some of those experts also had a valid point, but we found it out from experience, looking back. Imagine scientists not being in a dialogue and making another group of scientists wrong. Then we have our own big tech that shut people down that they don't agree with. Just think about where this narrow-minded view is going. If you don't agree with me, I don't like you, and I'm not going to deal with you. Then I'm going to paint you with a broad brush. Stupid. At least for me. So I don't anymore. Because the only journey I can change is my own. And it's been amazing for the last 19 plus years. November, it'll be 20 years. November 18th is my new birthday. How do I look at 20? That's how I feel. So I challenge you to look at overcoming where your petty, your selfishness, your greed, your fear, and find your calling, even if it's part-time, because you won't have to retire from it. Find the place where you can make a difference that's good, and then do good. Let yourself do good. And yes, you have to be intelligently selfish to take care of your family and those that depend on you, but also look for opportunities to do good, because you can do them by letting someone in line at the supermarket instead of railing against them. Or go to the back of the line. Or give somebody a buck when your acorn brain says no. Or buy someone a sandwich. But do something different. Break the pattern of small-minded thinking that we all have. I still have it. It's a journey. But break the pattern. Remember what Einstein said. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's what we're doing. We're standing up, railing against each other, making each other wrong. There's only one way that's the right way. Think about that in a universe. And think about what models the creator of this miracle that we live in. Some physicists, by the way, a few months ago, discovered in a super collider experiment, some atoms were acting in unexpected ways. And they had to journal that. They made a report. Google it. Atoms acting in unexpected ways. I chuckled because as a human being, I realized, let's see now, over my life, teachers, parents, friends, employers, employees, me, my grandchildren, my pets, lots of things. The weather have acted in unexpected ways, but because we're filled with hubris, we think we're general managers of the universe. That was my phone sliding down. We are surprised as physicists. Well, I say we. Physicists were surprised that atoms were acting in unexpected ways. It's part of this existence. So why don't you begin acting purposefully in unexpected ways, taking on your small-minded thinking, your fear of death, because it's coming. Like I said, I hope not tonight. And I hope you're still alive if you're watching this live event. I hope you haven't passed to what's next, but if you did, you're learning what I got a glimpse of, and it's amazing. And don't take my word for it. You can prove it to yourself by watching the effect of doing more good. That's the beginning of what you can do actually in this physical world. The rest will come. The rest will come. Live without fear and do good. I challenge you to test it for yourself. Thank you. Any questions? Steve at stevelentini.com. That's Steve at Steve L as in Linda, E-N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, I-N-I.com. I have a few podcasts that I'm glad to have guests on. I've had many guests on my You May Be Full of Shit If podcast, which is based on my two books. You May Be Full of Shit If, which is on Amazon. And for those that are PC, I wrote differently. You May Be Full of Number Two. After all, we know better, the woke edition. And I'm not making fun of anyone. I'm making fun of all that small-minded, narrow-minded thinking that has been seeping, making its way into our consciousness in journalism, in big tech, in politics, in religion, with neighbors, with families. It's fascinating that when you let it go, knowing there's a bigger intelligence than mine and the universe, of course, you all know there's a bigger intelligence than mine, but in the universe, there's something behind everything that's occurring. And mostly it's so that we can learn and grow and overcome ourselves. I wish you a great, long, healthy journey. Hope you make it beyond tonight. Thanks.